schools in the Sandhurst diocese have been invited to be part of an inquiry mindset process using Professor Helen Timpley from the University of Auckland. She and her colleague, Dr. Fiona L, are working with our schools on an evidence-based approach to looking at our data to determine how we can be more effective in our school improvement processes.
My interest in this work on the spirals of inquiry arose from a question that I had some years ago about why so much professional development for teachers made no difference to student learning.
In 2012, I heard Professor Helen Timpley deliver a keynote address at a conference in Sydney, and I knew I was listening to something I hadn't heard before.
So I started the work with an analysis of the research of what kind of professional development makes a difference for student learning, and changed it from professional development to professional learning, because it's actually when teachers were really engaged in what they were learning, and it focused very much on making a difference for their students in their classrooms and learning environments, that I came to unpack what really does make the difference.
Our teachers are encouraged to test their hunches around what they think is happening for the learners in their particular class. They use an evidence-based approach to actually look at their data and scan all of what is happening for their learners. From there, they try to focus in on targeted intervention to allow for optimal improvement in the learning of the students. As a system, what we're doing with Inquiry Mindset is really at the cutting edge of what's happening in education in Australia today. For all of our schools to be involved in some way and have that opportunity to engage in inquiry learning is going to hold them in the greatest stead if they want to have sustained and ongoing student improvement.
The spiral inquiry involves a series of phases. Essentially, it's about finding out what's going on for learners. So often as adults, we think that we know what's happening for our learners, but in reality, when we start to ask them, it's not nearly as obvious.
Our initial thoughts of the inquiry mindset was that the project really seemed enormous. It seemed like we were in the fog for a little while, and it was really tricky for us to find a focus.
We can only change a few things at a time, so that focusing phase means that you really look deeply at what we can change for our learners.
And the first challenge is to work out what exactly is it that we need to work on? What do we need to know? What's our biggest need? And there's lots of different things that feed into that. There's patterns of the students responding to particular questions perhaps, but there's also the things that the staff feel that they need or parents might have concerns about. There's lots of different things to consider when trying to work out a focus. But it's really critical, if you want to make change for student learning, that you are very focused on a small thing.
After we threw the ideas around about motivation and a focus on writing, we really found it difficult to hone into that narrow wedge that Helen was trying to lead us to. And we discovered that we were trying to focus on too many things.
We then decided to focus in the areas of years 3, 5, 7 and 9. And once we come to that conclusion, we're able to narrow and go narrow and deeper. We realised that that was far more beneficial to our school.
The next phase involves testing a hunch. How are we as adults contributing to the situation for our learners? People find this really hard because we're used to, as adults and professional teachers and educators, saying, we know what the conditions are that we're providing, we know we're doing the best. And then the following phase is about professional learning. What do we need to learn in order to address the hunches in the area of focus to make a difference for the learners? In other words, going backwards through the spiral.
What was it about our practice, our leadership, or our organisational structures or routines that needed to be shifted to have an impact on our learners?
Sometimes schools need help to work out what that student learning focus might be and to keep that student learning focus top of mind as they start to do other improvement work. What is it the teachers need to change? What needs to change in teachers' practice in order for student learning to change? So everything's tied back down to that student learning. So you might say, oh, the teachers need to ask more questions. Well, they only need to ask more questions in maths if asking more questions in maths is going to lead to better student learning in the focus area. So it's constantly talking about teaching and learning together in that pair.
And then it's about taking action, because if nothing happens differently, then obviously nothing's going to happen differently for learners. And then checking is have we made enough of a difference? And that means you have to have some goals and targets around what kind of difference you're wanting to make for your learners. And when teachers and leaders get into this as a way of thinking, then they really can make a difference over the long term to what's happening for learners.
Having systems whereby we can actually track and see the shift in learning, such as a number of the online data collection tools that are being collaboratively developed by the staff, have enabled us to have significant conversations about what has been the shift in student learning.
We needed to prioritise the project over all other things in the school, in attending the project meetings, but also leadership team meetings, PLC meetings, the school calendar, the annual action plan had to prioritise the inquiry mindset project.
Sometimes as leaders, we're doing things that stop people doing things they need to do. We're holding too many meetings. We're asking them to do too many other things. We've got 5 projects on the go. We're not clear about what we expect from people. We're not allowing time. We're not giving space. Because these things do take time and space to work through, and it can get really frustrating. But in the end, the more buy-in you've got, the more ownership people feel, the more change you will get. And on top of that, then there's organisational matters to do with, for example, are we having an assembly or fitness every day that practically takes 45 minutes by the time everyone's got there and got back? And is that what we want to be doing with that time? Could we give some of that time over to maths instruction or to literacy instruction? So there's lots of things that frame what happens in a classroom and what happens for students that need to be considered when you're looking at improvement.
It's not an add-on, it's not an extra program, it's just a mindset. So for us, what we've been able to do now is in terms of transference, is stay in the spiral of inquiry, realise that it can not only be around our writing, which is our initial focus, but we can now use it in all subject areas.
We can take what's working and then transfer and apply those to other systems across our college, other learning contexts. So as a community of adult learners, we're able to become the best we can be.
We were one of the schools in the first intake of the Inquiry Mindset project with Fiona and Helen.
I guess the question we face as a leadership team is how do we keep the momentum? And it comes down to 3 simple areas for us. We need to keep our calendar clear, we need to keep our agendas clear, and our annual action plan needs to really focus on what's important for us and where we want to see the most growth.
Hopefully you now have an understanding of the commitment of the Diocese of Sandhurst to Inquiry Mindset. The Diocese of Sandhurst is now in its 4th year working with Helen Timperley, and we can already see measurable improvements in what is taking place in our schools. More than 3/4 of our primary schools and a good number of our secondary colleges are participating in the Inquiry Mindset process with Helen Timperley.
Our greatest desire and hope out of schools engaging in this process is that we'll have a turnaround in our data sets so that we're actually looking at an upward trajectory and an improvement model that can be sustained over a period of time. Schools are using existing data that they have. It's not an add-on, the inquiry mindset. It's around looking at the spiral, moving through the spiral, and critically coming back over a period of time to have a look at where to next and what to do with the learners in our care.
I've seen teachers near retirement who are kind of in signing off mode, who've continued to teach because they've got so excited about the whole process, and it's just regenerated their enthusiasm for teaching and learning because they can see that it's making a difference for students.
It gives schools a clear direction. It gives school leadership and those who work in our classrooms really strong, profound and tested strategies. As Director of Catholic Education here in the Diocese, I firmly believe that the inquiry mindset process is a worthwhile one, and it equips us with good strategies and directions to help our young people achieve all that they can in life.